Hi folks, this is Dan with Dan's Retirement Journey. So a lot of my friends have been asking me questions concerning why I want to go and retire to the Philippines. Well, the most obvious reason would be quality of life. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and recreate the quality of life that I have here in Sacramento at, during my retirement years. Now, because I didn't save tons of money, I'm not going to be able to retire here in the style in which I've become accustomed in Sacramento. I want to have a certain level of comfort. I would say that right now I'm lower middle class. As I had mentioned in previous videos, I'm a government employee. I have about 21 years of service, so I'm looking forward to having a pension. So when I look at other people's blogs coming from the Philippines, I'm basically hearing that they're living on something like $1,500 a month, either on Social Security or disability, which is fine because from what I can tell, they don't want to suffer either in retirement, and so it gives them a level of comfort that they would not have been able to afford here in the United States. So Sacramento, as most of you know, is becoming a very, very expensive place to live. And I want to be in a place that I can afford in an economy that is growing and not shrinking. So one could argue that due to recent events, all bets are off as far as where the economy may be headed, whether you're in the United States or living in the Philippines. But truth be told, um, expatriates are abandoning the Philippines in large numbers, which is really driving the cost of apartment rentals and real estate downward. And in recent years, it had been spiking. And I had a lot of friends that live in the Philippines tell me that, oh, a few years ago there would be there isn't a better time to buy than now in the Philippines. Prices will continue to go up. Now, I mentioned that my wife has purchased land. I say my wife and I, but really it's my wife. Works very hard. She purchased land in the Philippines. It's about, I don't know, about 150 square meters, which is a very, very small residential lot. And we'll soon be building a home on there, a bungalow, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, about 100 square meters, which is probably equivalent to about 1,075 feet, give or take a couple feet. So like I said, it's going to be a bungalow, single-story house. One thing I didn't want to do is build a grand two-story house and then end up getting caught in the same economic quandary that I'm in now here in the United States, and that is that owning a single-family home with uh, with a mortgage and then not seeing through to living the actual, not realizing the actual American dream. The American dream is not exactly, uh, it has not exactly become the American nightmare, not by a long shot, in my estimation, but it certainly feels as though we're headed in that direction. To give you an idea of what rents are going for in the Philippines, I would say that based on some of the blogs that I've been watching lately, you can be in a comfortable setting for somewhere between $250 and $400 a month. I know that shocks a few people to hear that rents are so low, but remember the exchange rate right now, the value of the money is about 48 Philippine pesos compared to every American dollar. So anyway, I decided that what I wanted to do was go look on the computer and get an Investopedia and see if I could find out what the pros and the cons are for retiring in the Philippines. This is an article by Gene Folger, and it was dated September 24th, 2019. Granted, a lot has changed since then. It's like night and day. And I would say that you have to take these numbers with a grain of salt if you really wanted to get an accurate portrayal or an idea of what it costs to live, then you want to go on YouTube and you want to look at videos like Paul's Asian Adventures, Old Dog New Tricks, Philly in the Philippines, and uh, definitely you want to see Rike. If you don't know who Rike is, he pretty much has been vlogging for a long time, and definitely has excellent information on what's going on in the Philippines. Of course, another thing that's caught my attention is they not only have a nice uh, group of older folks wanting to retire there, but also you have a lot of young people that are living now in the Philippines because of the lifestyle they're able to afford by being influencers and taking advantage of the new, what I call the new uh, global economy, which is basically, move overseas, enjoy your life, and make as much money as you possibly can doing remote work. And one of those bloggers would be Finn Snow and his partner, and you have um, well, you have several young people that you can get ideas about the cost of living in the Philippines. So anyway, I'm just gonna you know I'm just gonna mention a few things here from this article that talks about pros and cons. I'm gonna start off with the negatives. So, such as you know the fact that there are problems with infrastructure, healthcare and safety issues. Healthcare is an interesting thing. Here in America, we're kind of like, healthcare becomes like the ball and chain. In other words, it's what keeps us here in the United States working. We depend on um, Medicare in order to take care of some of our healthcare needs. But I think that because the cost of medical care is so much more expensive here in the United States than it is on other parts of the world. And also something you should keep in mind is that we do not, and I repeat, we do not have the best medical care in the world. If you guys care to blog that, I welcome you to blog that to see if my statement is not true. As a matter of fact, we're pretty far down the list from some of the best places to get health care in the world. As a matter of fact, I would say that being in the Philippines, I'm going to be within 2 to 4 hours plane ride of some of the centers that offer the best medical care in the world. Not only the best medical care, but they're participating in creating medical tourism, and that is turning out to be a pretty viable industry. And so they're actually trying to persuade and market their services to expatriates in order to get some of their medical care done overseas. For example, there's nothing like getting open heart surgery done in Bangkok uh, for $10,000. Shoot, you could charge that on your American Express card if you had to. So infrastructure is definitely a problem in the Philippines, but the more I travel around Sacramento, I got to tell you, we have a deteriorating infrastructure. We have potholes in the street. We have cracks, unpaved uh, roadways, and we definitely have a deteriorating infrastructure. And so that definitely is one of the drawbacks. I would say that retiring to the Philippines is not going to work for a lot of folks, especially those folks that want to be close to their families. But I started thinking about it. I have a mom, by the way, who's still alive at age 84, and I've got to tell you, I only see her 4 or 5 times per year, and a lot of times we're using Messenger and other services in order to communicate. And I know it's not a hug and it's not a kiss on the cheek, but it's the best next thing to actually being there. So things like Messenger and Skype and WhatsApp have brought families closer together. Quite frankly, I gotta tell you something. I'm not sure I mean, I care for my kids, but I don't have any problem communicating them via email or messenger or some other service. So, even though the Philippines is still a low-cost country, it it did not rank very well in the cheapest level of cost of living. Just like to point that out. For example, in 2018, the Philippines earned a 90% for the fifth cheapest place to live. Vietnam actually came in second at a 96 score, and the country also scored 96 for fitting in. Is English spoken? One of the other things you should know is that English is spoken um, in the country. English is actually second language, is taught in school, and before they get out of school, they have to know English. There are many, many dialects of in the Philippines, and you'd be hard pressed to even master one. But I know that I'm going to do my best when I get there to learn some of the local dialects so that I can fit in and effectively communicate. I'll be living on the island of Leyte in a place called Baybay Leyte, which is actually spelled Baybay. If some of you would like to learn about what it's like, uh, all you have to do is go to YouTube, and you'll find a couple of videos, really good ones, from their visitors authority or tourism office that will show you what it's like to live in Baybay Leyte. They're starting to build there. They have a bay walk. They've built a water park. You could see that they want to orient themselves so when things open back up, they will be able to have something there to attract tourism. And it's actually a very, very nice place to visit. And I shall soon find out whether it's a very nice place to live or not. They have a small Dunkin Donuts there where some expatriates meet every morning, and I've been there several times. I could tell you that I walked into a Dunkin Donuts there in the morning to get my morning coffee and to use the internet service there, and there I met an American expatriate from right here in Sacramento from a neighborhood called Rosemont. So here I am 7,000 miles plus away from home, and there in the Dunkin Donuts was sitting a gentleman who is retired there, who owns some property and has built a nice home, who formerly used to live here in Sacramento, California, in the Rosemont neighborhood. So I'll have to admit that was kind of nice. Well, as I was saying, for most people, the decision to retire abroad is pretty difficult. It can be more challenging to decide where to settle down, especially in the Philippines, because you have the opportunity to live in many, many attractive places. Baybay Leyte being one of them, but I've been all over the Philippines. I've been to Baguio City. I've been to Angeles City and the Pampanga area. I've been to Pangasinan. I've been in Manila, and I like parts of Manila. If you've never been to Makati City, then I recommend that you visit Makati City because it reminds me a lot of Century City, Los Angeles. And so if you like that futuristic look, that modern look where you cannot tell whether you've left the United States or not, then you want to go to Makati. And I've got to tell you that the malls are super modern, and the reason is because it's hot outside, so people they like to stay inside in the mall. One of the malls that I truly enjoy very much is located in a place called Cebu. It's called Ayala and Ayala Center Mall. And if you go there, what you'll appreciate about that is, Starbucks coffee for one. Starbucks coffee, McDonald's, and basically anything that you can find in the West, you can find there in Cebu, right there in Ayala Center. And also, I'm sure when things get back on track and the economy starts to grow again, you'll start seeing Ayala Center bustling again. And so one of the ideas I had was to live part-time in the province that my wife is from, Baybay, Leyte, and then move part-time and live in near Ayala Mall or somewhere close by where you have world-class hospital care. There are a couple of international hospitals located there, like Doctors Hospital, that in case something were to happen, my wife wouldn't have to lug me very far in order to get some of the finest medical care that the Philippines has to offer. Okay, so I said like one of the pros was low cost of living. Based on your budget, you can find just about, it could anything, any place to live that could fit into your budget. Keep in mind that a few years ago, I believe in 2018, the average retired U.S. worker Social Security benefit is $1,404. If you didn't think that you could live, you know, someplace in the world and have the Western comfort of living, a Western style comfort of living, then you're mistaken, because I could think of at least half a dozen places that you could live on $1,400 a month, including Chiang Mai, Thailand. I've been there several times. Bangkok, you could live in the city of Bangkok even. You could live in Da Nang, Vietnam for that. You could definitely live in Malaysia for that. Anywhere in the Philippines that I could think of that's outside the Civic Center, you would be successful finding a place to live uh, for under, total expenses, $1,400 per month. You have folks doing it now, and they're easy to find on YouTube. One of them would be Overstay Road. You want to get a sense of what it's like to live in that Subic Bay Olongapo area, then you want to check out the YouTube um, influencer on Overstay Road. As I was saying, all isn't, you have to, there's a trade-off, between, um, you have to work a little bit and get used to the culture. When I first visited the Philippines back in 2000, I think it was 2003 or 2004, I suffered from tremendous culture shock. That was because there were beggars on the streets. People were living on the street, and they were even bathing small children on the street. And they constantly had their hand out, wanting for a little help. And sometimes I would offer it to them, and I got a lot of critique about that because people were saying, "Oh no, you're going to mess up. You're going to mess up. You're going to mess things up. The local economy, or they're going to follow you around." I mean, you name the reason why folks didn't want me to give the beggars money, and I had to hear it. I had to hear it 4 or 5, sometimes a dozen times a day if I wanted to help out a beggar on the street. Because for sure they're going to follow you around because they know you're a foreigner, you're different than they are, and they're going to follow you around because they know you have money. Um, I would say that the major cities are fairly safe places to live. In the past, some of them have been subjected to terrorist attacks by groups that are in the South. Those are folks and groups that have been negotiating for their own protected territory in the Philippines. As far as I know, those negotiations continue, but they're few and far between, and they're pretty isolated. They're fairly isolated. So I wouldn't worry too much about your safety in the Philippines. You hear about somebody getting kidnapped now and again, and I've got to say, I don't want to minimize the reports about kidnappings and things like that, but truth be told, um, it almost seemed like they put themselves in a position where they were saying, take me. And so here's the whole thing. You have to follow the same safety measures as you would follow if you were visiting any major city in the United States. I don't care what city it is. You have to practice caution and be aware of your surroundings at all times. And it doesn't help if you're married to a Filipina, because she'll come out there and she'll be protecting you as you go along. She'll usually spot something that isn't right before you do. And so it's a nice thing to have a friend there. And trust me, I have plenty of friends there that should I move there, I would have, I'd have a crew. I would say I would be in a bubble of protection, so to speak, but it hardly is necessary, but it's silly to be walking around, very busy place like Manila in certain parts of the town that without somebody with you, So I wouldn't advise going out alone and taking your chances in the middle of the night. Most of the time you hear people getting into trouble, it's because they're out there in the middle of the night messing around someplace. I don't recommend that you do that. You just want to use precautions. So I think that I've given you a tiny bit of a useful introduction as to what it's like to live in the Philippines. I may have forgotten to mention that I visited there maybe 14 or 15 times, could be even more often. I probably could take any one of you who wanted to go on a tour of the Philippines anywhere from north to south, no problem whatsoever. I know what areas to stay away from. I definitely know which ones you'd want to visit. It's a very, very impressive country. It's a beautiful country, the home to white sandy beaches, and if you read it all about traveling, you know that some of the islands have made the list of the best islands to visit in the entire world. One of them being Palawan and Boracay, and you have Siargao and northern Cebu for these beautiful beaches. And it's going to come to pass, trust me, that one day you're going to see me living out my dream, and that is going to be lounging around on a white sandy beach, most likely in northern Cebu, with, I don't know, a fruity umbrella drink in each hand. And so that's all for now, and I'll see you in the next video.